Finally, some peace and quiet, guys. Anytime I try to present you with information, a deep dive, some analytical numbers, I can't get through 2 sentences without Bull interrupting me. So guess what I did? I took Bull, G, J, and Tyvus out of the equation so I could tell you what I have to say, and then I'll let you decide for yourselves whether or not you take Brock Purdy or Deshaun Watson long term. So in the sake of pure transparency, guys on the panel, not me, you, check your phones. I just sent you all the notes and numbers so you can follow along as we go through what we have to get to. The question today is Brock Purdy, Deshaun Watson. Who would you rather have long-term moving forward? And let's start with the obvious. If we're talking about ceilings, Deshaun Watson's ceiling is significantly higher than Brock Purdy's. I'm not quite sure that Brock Purdy can ever lead a team or play at the elite level that Deshaun Watson did in 2020. What Watson did in 2020 was absurd. He carried the Texans offensively despite the fact they didn't have a tremendous record. They were just 4-12. And I don't think at the end of the day that Purdy can ever do that. He will never be the quarterback to carry an offense on his shoulders by himself. I also think it's pretty obvious that he's in a much better situation than Deshaun Watson is at the moment. Purdy went into San Francisco, a team with a great head coach, a good offensive line, a running back in Christian McCaffrey who is as multifaceted and versatile as any in the league. They have weapons. And did I say they have Kyle Shanahan as opposed to Deshaun Watson, who is, he's stuck with David Bell and Cedric Tillman if he ever gets on the field. However, I'm not just going to give Deshaun Watson a pass because, as he said in his own words, there are no excuses this season. Back in August, after the preseason game against the Commanders, Watson said, and I quote, "I'm not thinking about no rust. That was last year. I missed ball. I played in 6 games last year and had a full offseason. So I'm not thinking about no rust. I'm not using no excuses for no rust or anything like that." So if Deshaun Watson isn't going to use excuses for himself, then I'm not going to give him a pass either. And I'm also not going to hold it against Brock Purdy for where he was drafted. That's just circumstantial. It is what it is. We can't change that. The Niners drafted Purdy, and it's worked so far. So with that out of the way, let's get to the facts. If Brock Purdy was named Patrick Mahomes and had been doing exactly what he's done so far this season, he'd be the frontrunner for MVP. Through 5 games, through week 5 in the NFL, Purdy is first in the NFL in QBR, first in quarterback rating, second in yards per attempt, second in completion percentage, 7th in touchdown passes, and 8th in passing yards, all while San Francisco has a top 5 running attack in the NFL. If you take the name off the resume, those stats on your screen are the frontrunner for MVP. But because he's Brock Purdy, because he's Mr. Irrelevant, we all have had to take a deep breath and say, well, is it because Purdy's good or is it because he's in the perfect system? And the answer is it's probably a little bit of both. But let's dive into some of the basic numbers. It's really interesting because Deshaun Watson made his first start for the Cleveland Browns on December 4th, 2022 against the Houston Texans. On that exact same day, Jimmy G got hurt against Miami and Brock Purdy played 2.5, almost 3 full quarters against the Dolphins. So they've essentially been in their system since the exact same day. Now, Purdy has played 2 more games. Watson missed week 4 against Baltimore in the bye week, so it's 11 games in this comparison as opposed to 9. But let's look at these basic numbers. Since the exact same calendar day, December 12th, 2022, Purdy is 11-0. Deshaun Watson is 5-4. Let's look at the touchdown passes. Watson's thrown 11, Purdy's thrown 22, and you may ask, and Bull, I know is going to ask, well, what's the context? How many? Bull, I got you, buddy. Calm down. 22 is the second most in the NFL since December 4th of 2022. Behind only Kirk Cousins, he is tied with Patrick Mahomes for the second most touchdown passes, in the NFL since December 4th of 2022. That's more than Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. He's also just the 10th quarterback in NFL history to throw for 20 or more touchdowns in his first 10 career starts, and he is the fewest interceptions of any of those guys. So what he's done through the first 10 starts of his career is not just impressive, it's historically good. All right, let's get back to the basic stats here. Interceptions, Watson 7, Purdy 3, the fewest interceptions of any quarterback with 200-plus passing attempts in that span. So he's thrown the second most touchdown passes and the fewest interceptions since he made his debut on December 12th December 4th, 2022. Completion percentage, Watson just under 61%, Purdy just over 69%. And quarterback rating, which is a flawed stat, but still a little context. Watson, 82.2, Purdy, 114.4. Here's a little context on that QB rating, by the way. Watson's average in his 9 games in Cleveland, an 82.2. Purdy's lowest quarterback rating in any of his 11 regular season games, a 95.4. That is 12 points higher. His lowest single game QB rating is 12 points higher than Watson's average. He also has 8 games of the 11 with a QB rating of 100 or more. Watson in 9 games has just 2. We don't really care about rushing stats. It's kind of irrelevant, but Purdy has 3, Watson has 2. He also has the advantage in that realm. Let's talk some advanced stats, though, because basic stats don't tell the whole picture. And once again, advanced stats don't tell it all either. These are all according to PFF or Pro Football Reference. Watson has more bad throws than Purdy in 2 fewer games. He has fewer big-time throws than Purdy, 10 for Purdy, 7 for Watson. Turnover-worthy plays, they're tied at 12 each. Their pressure-to-sack ratio, so when they get pressured, how often do they get sacked? Watson, when he's pressured, goes down 26.7% of the time. Purdy, fewer than 17%. According to PFF's adjusted completion percentage, which takes drops into consideration, which takes bad passes, did your feet get in bounds, everything else, Watson, 73.7, Purdy, 79.2. Their average depth of target, here's where Watson does win. A 8.65 to Purdy's 7.5. However, this season, Purdy leads the league in completion percentage on passes of 10 or more yards. He also is second in the NFL in average depth of target this season. And for their PFF grades, Purdy nearly 14 points higher. He's also been better under pressure, not just this season, but last season as well. Purdy this year under pressure. You guys ready for these numbers? 295 yards, 4 touchdowns, completing 56% of his passes on 52 dropbacks. Watson, 144 yards and 1 interception. Here's some telling stats, like to kind of put this in context, how good Purdy's been. He has 8 multi-touchdown games in his first 10 career starts. That ties Kurt Warner and Deshaun Watson for the most ever in a player's first 10 starts. His 70.4 career completion percentage through 10 starts, second highest in NFL history, only behind Chad Pennington. Shout out to Chad Pennington. And his 121.1 passer rating through 10 career starts, the best of all time. Purdy may not have the rocket arm, but he's an immaculate processor, and he puts the ball on the money damn near every single time. I wanted to look into this. It took me a while to find the stats, but I did it for you guys because I love you. And, Bull, I knew you were going to ask this, so here you go. How about yards after catch based on completions? How does a quarterback throw the ball to his receiver so they can catch it in stride, get yards after catch? Well, Purdy, he averages 4.82 yak yards per completion. That's 4th in the NFL. Behind Tua, behind C.J. Stroud, and ironically behind Kenny Pickett, whose numbers are completely inflated due to that 71-yard touchdown pass against the Browns in Week 2. So really take Pickett out. Stroud's a little bit of an anomaly too. Tua and Brock Purdy, the 2 most prolific passers in the NFL in terms of placing the ball on the money so their receivers can get yards after catch. In comparison, Watson averages just 4.08 yards per catch after a completion. That ranks 26th in the NFL. There's not a single metric since these 2 quarterbacks took the field on December 4th, 2022, that indicates Deshaun is better than Brock Purdy. There's not. And you could say, well, yeah, but Deshaun just played his best game of his Browns tenure against Tennessee. 2 touchdowns, 289 yards. Yeah, he did. And I hope we see more of that. But that was 2 touchdowns, 289 against a bad secondary. Purdy on Sunday Night Football just threw for 4 touchdowns against a top 5 rated secondary. A couple other things to consider. Well, Deshaun has had a full offseason with his receivers, with his coaching staff, with this roster to accumulate. Purdy didn't throw a pass till the second preseason week because he tore his UCL and had to get Tommy John surgery after losing to the Eagles in the NFC Championship last season. And most importantly, how about results? Because this is what really matters. Since taking over the starting job, December 4th of last season, essentially when Jimmy G went out, Purdy's played in 11 games. The 49ers have scored 30 or more points in 10 of those 11 games, including 8 straight. The one they didn't, they had 21 points. Deshaun Watson has not led the Browns to a 30-point performance. Is it his fault? Certainly not all of it. Is it Purdy's reason they scoring 30 every week? No. Kyle Shanahan offenses are always good. But what makes Purdy special is the level he's taken this offense to in 2023. Let's go back to the years of some of Shanahan's offenses. This season, they're averaging 33.4 points per game. Last season with Brock Purdy, 33.5 points per game. The year before, in 2021, 24 points. 2020, 23.5 points per game. And the year they made the Super Bowl in 2019, they averaged 29.6. This is the most prolific we have ever seen a Kyle Shanahan offense. And that's partly due to the weapons they have, the scheme, and the fact that Brock Purdy is playing flawless football right now. Listen, the ceiling for Purdy is not as high as Deshaun Watson's. I cannot argue that. If you switch them, yeah, Watson on San Francisco would probably be deadly, and I don't think Purdy's as good in Cleveland as he's in San Francisco. But what Purdy does better than any quarterback in football right now is he doesn't make mistakes, he gets the ball out on time, and he's an elite processor. I think there's a 60% chance Deshaun Watson gets back to the elite, top tier, top 3, top 4 level quarterback we saw him be in 2020 with Houston. I give it a 60% chance. I think there's a 90% chance this is the floor of Brock Purdy. He's getting better from last year. He's gotten better from last year to this year. He's gotten better this season week to week. There is another level to Brock Purdy, despite the fact he may never have the unbelievable arm strength that some of the top-tier quarterbacks in football have. However, if you're telling me long-term I get this level of Brock Purdy, the perfect point guard, the Greg Maddux of the NFL right now, I'm taking that and running to the bank because I can put a good team around Brock Purdy and maximize my playmakers' skill sets based on what Brock Purdy does best. I'm taking a 90% chance of Purdy being this good and better over a 60% chance of Deshaun Watson returning to his 2020 form. So with that, if I had to choose one or the other long term, I'm sorry, Cleveland, but I'm rocking with Brock Purdy.